Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I am Fudo fan basically everywhere.
Hello, my name is Khuê, and you can find me on Instagram at midaicat.
And I'm Alesa, and I'm Inky Rocks on just about everywhere.
Yeah, y'all are getting a little, I don't want to say lazy, but a bit sloppy on the intros, eh?
No, but it's hard to remember. Like, what platforms am I on now? I need to write it down ahead of time.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I don't know what platforms I'm on anymore.
You know, we've only done this like 67 times before.
You did it 67. We are not as...
That's right. We're newbies.
Yeah, exactly. We're still newbies. And Alicia has a good excuse.
That's good.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's right. So thank you everybody for joining us. This is the last podcast before we will record our Tokyo International Pen Show episode, and I think we're all looking really forward to that. Before we get into talking about the pen show, kind of our expectations, what we're looking forward to, we do have some other topics that we can talk about. So, without further ado, I like to just start with kind of talking a little bit about that paper topic we had last time, in the light of Cosmo Air Light being discontinued. I think that was a little bit of a, not as much as Tomoe River, but still a little bit of a shock to the system for a lot of fountain pen fans. And Jacob, you and I, we talked about all these other little paper kind of makers, and we actually went out and we bought some of these papers. And so we met up, I think, last week, and we shared some of these papers. You gave me this, what is it? Smooth onion skin?
Yeah.
Is that it? And then I got 5 different papers. I gave you Sun Kent Soliste, Slight White, and Half Tone Color White. Oh, and there was another one I didn't give you, which was B7 Bulky.
That one I already tried before. It's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about these papers? Because I know, Jacob, you're a huge paper fan. You actually, to my understanding, to my knowledge, you actually carry a special pen to make sure that you find the best paper available.
Yeah, well, I always have my evil stress test ink ready whenever I need to test some new paper. And every notebook at Itoya now has a few lines. Fudo fan was here.
And so we've talked a little bit about this particular ink on the podcast before, but what are you looking for when you test these papers, and why particularly that ink?
Well, it's more of a screening test. I mean, it's not that the paper is going to be good just because it behaves well with that ink and vice versa. But just in general, in my experience, any paper that can handle that ink well is going to handle any ink without problems. So I don't consider a paper bad just because it can't handle this ink, but I'm almost certain that it's going to handle any ink like a champ if it can handle this evil Kakimori ink. So that's why I use it as a screening. Mm-hmm. But one thing I will say more recently is that I've come to care less and less about what the ink looks like on the paper, and more about the actual feedback and how it feels when you write, because nowadays that's what I care more about. So there's some paper I like that has this very nice, just the right amount of feedback. Like, for example, there's this paper called Light Force from Hokuetsu. It has just the right amount of feedback. Ink looks kind of okay. I would never use that for Instagram ink swatches because it doesn't look nearly as nice as, say, Sunset and Tomoe River, but I much prefer it over Sunset and Tomoe River because of that feedback, because how it feels when I write.
And I also noticed that when we were testing the ink, you really went, like a mad scientist mode in a way, looking at like the vibrancy, at the bleed through, at the show through. What are some of the things that you're looking for when you want to see if a paper is handling that ink well?
Well, so again, it depends on whether you want to use it for ink testing or just for like writing in general. If you want a paper that just is very Instagrammable, then I would say for this particular ink, this Kakimori ink I'm using, if the ink is vibrant, if it doesn't get absorbed, in other words, if you see a lot of sheen once it dries, and of course if there's no show through, if there's no bleed through, then that's gonna look pretty good. While some cheaper paper tends to look more washed out, and you get a lot of feathering, and just you don't get any sheen whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think of the paper that we tried last week. Personally, I really liked this slight white paper. It's a bit thicker. It reminds me of the Tomoe River 68 GSM. This half-tone color white was also pretty good. And I think for me, as you said just now, these two papers to me, they feel really what I describe as precise.
Yeah.
They feel like the nib is hitting just the paper, and unlike Cosmo Air Light, it really has a true nib width accuracy, and I feel like I can control the nib to do exactly what I want it to do. Whereas I think for some of the papers with more cushion feel, it feels like I'm almost losing control over that paper. So in essence, I think we're really talking about the same thing, that feedback of the paper, of how you want to write with it.
Yeah, I think my favorite of the bunch was Slight White, which apparently is a collaboration between a paper maker, Hokuetsu, and an art supplies maker. It meant to work great with colored pencils, for example. But as we discovered, it's fantastic with fountain pens, just because you get just the right amount of feedback. You can control, your characters well. And again, it doesn't look, it's not as Instagrammable as, Graphilo or Tomoe River, but it just feels so nice to write on.
And I would say the shading is actually pretty good on that paper. And depending on the ink you use, you still do get sheen. I would argue that this is a very suitable replacement for Tomoe River 68, if not maybe even better, just because of how much sharper it feels. Whereas halftone color white, that's a much thinner paper. I think that's a suitable replacement for the Techo paper, Tomoe River 52.
Yes, the only sure thing on my shopping list for tips this month is going to be some A4 slight white loose sheets, because I definitely want some of this.
Yeah, that's it's a good one. But we did talk about, and this is a little bit of a tangent, I suppose, but we talked a little bit about how unfortunate the naming of these papers are. I think Tomoe River was kind of just really catchy, right? And Cosmo Air Light, wow, cool name. I think Slight White is probably less marketable as a name, and so is Half Tone Color White.
Yeah, Slight White is not that SEO friendly. It's kind of hard to Google.
Yeah. Khuê, Alesa, have you guys tried any new papers since Tomoe River has been discontinued? Are you experimenting with other products?
For my part, I'm really ashamed that, you remember, we did all these tests, I think summer 2021, and I never posted the picture. And I think we tried like 20 kind of different paper, and I'm so sorry that it completely get out of so I need to, how to say, maybe find some hour and post them, and yeah my bad. But I like the Life bank paper, I know that the reaction with many inks is very, very surprising. But for letter writing, is one of the one I often use. I have the notepad, so it's a good compromise. If not, I have the stock of my Tomoe River I bought just before you announced that it will get completely sold out. So I still get maybe a five or six of the notebooks. I'm how to say for a while. I think I still have enough of them. So not that much new test except the one we did last summer.
I think Alesa has been exploring some European notebooks.
Yeah, that's basically where I kind of went in that direction because I think I just got a little bit overwhelmed with all the different paper in Japan. And I don't know, have you guys heard of New Gray?
Yeah,
it was so weird. Have you talked to the guy about it? When the guy was selling it, I asked him, why did you make this paper? He says, because it's gray. And that was basically the answer. It's fine, but it's just gray. But yeah, I had ordered some paper from Pen Heaven and was given some, and I really like Stanford paper, and I was really shocked at how much I would like the European papers. I'd kind of gotten into this Japan's got superior paper, which I tend to believe, but I kind of got into that where you kind of thought maybe other paper wasn't as good. And I've used Rhodia and Clairefontaine, and I like both of them, with the emphasis on like. I don't love both of them. But Stanford, and I also ordered Roma and L'Ariège, and they all had, I think I just got so disappointed with Cosmo Airlight and the fact that the new Tomoe River is just a little bit spongy for me. A little bit, just a very little bit. And these papers had nice, crisp feedback. And it was really pleasant to write with. And I kind of had to rearrange my head a little bit. And they aren't as, they could handle a lot of the stress tests, but I don't think they're going to be the showy paper like Tomoe River is when it comes to like showing sheen and chroma shading and stuff like that. I just don't think anybody really has been able to beat Tomoe River on that. But just for writing, for journaling, and just like Jacob was saying, now one of the things I'm looking at is just not whether or not a paper will show sheen and all that, because there's a lot of papers that do all these specialty things with specialty inks. I wanted something I could just write, and it felt good to write. It felt, fun to use a fountain pen just to write, not to drip ink or whatever. And basically I found all three papers held up really well, and they were enjoyable, particularly the Stanford, and that's like handmade in just north of London. So yeah, I've been exploring European papers, and I've been very pleasantly surprised by it.
And somewhat related to that, but you discovered that some of those leather covers were surprisingly affordable compared to what we're used to here in Japan.
Oh, absolutely. I bought a very small, Color Chart. That's the company that Itoya sells. I think they sell a lot of, different leather goods and stuff. And literally everything was twice as expensive as exact same thing as it was that I had ordered from this company that they had imported it from Italy. One was from Italy and one was from France, and then one from England. And it was it was much more affordable. You could get an A5 journal with a removable, reusable leather cover for like $50, and that's just, you can't do that here in Japan, even with the yen rate.
Right.
So I thought that was just a nice option. So
yeah, I would definitely encourage you to try that slight white then, because I think it has that crisp feeling.
Feedback.
Yeah, that crisp feeling, and I agree with you that Sanzen Tomoe River, it feels a little bit more cushioned.
Just
it feels
a real little
bit more
bit.
like
Yeah,
Cosmo
just
Light.
a real little bit. Not enough to put me off the paper at all, but I could feel it a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely usable, but I think when you have like Grafilo and Tomoe River, those tended to be a little bit more crisp, and Sanzen definitely doesn't feel the same way.
Agree.
One thing that is different about slight white, so when we think of fountain pen friendly paper, we usually mean some form of coated paper. Like Tommy River is famously coated, Cosmo Light is coated, Graphito is coated, and so on. Slate White is not coated, apparently, according to the website. I wonder if that has something to do with that feedback you get, and maybe it handles oils better than because of that.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. All right. So moving on to the next topic, we didn't actually talk about this, but there have been some new platinum pens, but you wouldn't necessarily know unless you're part of this mailing list. And we used to have this almost, I want to say, segment where every 2 weeks we laugh at some random thing that Mori-san did. So we're going to bring that back. So the first pen, you actually, Jacob, you did a reel about this, right? This is the White Tiger 3776 in the Nice model.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
that pen seems to be... It's already sold out as far as I understand. Big reason for that is, of course, that nowadays you can just email, even if you don't live in Japan, you can just email Mori-san directly and order it. So he sold a lot overseas, apparently, and is now sold out. And it was an unusual model. I mean, we talked about it in previous episodes, but it's unusual in that, I mean, it was this sort of, I'm not sure if it was white or sort of cream, but then more importantly, it had ruthenium trims, which is kind of unusual for a platinum pen.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because in this mailing list, there are two versions of pictures. There's the picture that Licto takes for their shop. It's, among these leaves, it's really nice. And then you have the photocopier, the scanner.
The scanner, yeah. But that's his signature.
Yeah. Flatting
Yeah.
all the dimension in the scanner.
Yeah. And there are just these little details on the nib is engraved this face of I believe it's a tiger. And on the top, it looks like, part of their stripes, but it actually says a W for Wagner. So it's a little detail that some people might not realize if they miss it. But I want to talk about these grinds, Jacob. So before I do that, Mori-san sold the two pens, and we're going to talk about the second one, but he sold the two pens a little differently. The first pen, which is this White Tiger, he opened up the orders for it with the domestic orders and the international orders together, right? So
Yeah.
people who are overseas, they got the notification at the same time.
Actually, a bit earlier than the Japanese one, yeah.
And Mori-san was surprised at how many overseas customers wanted to order the pen. So, with that in mind, let's talk about the grinds. They commissioned two nib sizes. The first is soft fine, SF, and it's just SF. And then the second, which is the M, you have the choice of what he calls adjusted, which is, like just the way it's weird because in English it says adjusted, but in Japanese it says ari no mama, which means he didn't touch it.
Well, it doesn't actually mean, I mean, according to, I think, the website or somewhere, what he means by that is that he does basic check to see if the tines are aligned. And
right.
If anything needs to be done to make it right, okay, but he doesn't do any grinding, yeah.
Yeah. And then, okay, I'm going to go out of order, okay? There's extra fine, which, it's fairly self-explanatory. There's cursive italic, all right? And then there is wet and creamy.
And that was apparently by far the most popular one among his overseas customers. He was surprised by that, and I don't think he realizes why.
I'd order it. Just to say you had that.
Exactly.
Wet and creamy. Nice. That aside, the pen is quite handsome. Ruthenium trim, and the body, I believe, is a little matte, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on this white Nice model, which I thought Platinum wasn't making anymore, it's quite a nice, handsome pen. There's a bit of a translucency there, and you can see through it a bit. It does look quite ethereal. It's a nice pen.
The only problem, I think, is that I suspect the ruthenium is not going to hold up well over time. And the pen I had, it already showed signs of, I'm not sure what to call it, but I think you have experience with that from your plating experiments. You know that ruthenium is quite difficult in that sense. It very easily comes off, right?
Yeah. When Nagahara grinds nibs like this, he usually puts a piece of tape over so he doesn't damage the plating as well.
Yeah, but I don't mean just the nib. I'm even talking about the cap band, the trims.
Yeah, there are some reports of this particular plating being quite volatile. It seems to happen to some pens, but not others. Right? If it holds, it holds, and then if it doesn't hold, it flakes off immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the White Tiger. And the way that I ordered the White Tiger is that I emailed Mori-san and said, I want, these White Tigers. And he said, okay, I've secured your order. Please send your money to this place. So I send the money to this place. I email him. I say, I've sent the money. And he says, I received it. Which sounds pretty normal, right? The next one, which is the danwatsu, the kind of counseling.
I usually call it his pen clinic.
Yeah, pen clinic. Pen clinic version was a Platinum President.
Yeah,
it's a purple President, and again, this pen is quite handsome. What's unique about this is that it's matte, but not only is the body matte, the section is also matte. And I think in his blog he mentioned that this might be one of the only pens, or Wagner might be one of the only groups or pens that has this matte grip.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read out the grinds. There's adjusted, and then in Japanese it says butt left shape by Yukio Nagahara. And we've talked about this butt left. In English it says naginata. So I'm not really, like, we all know it is a naginata, but I'm just not sure why he doesn't, keep it consistent.
I think now, because of the previous models, if you assume that the Japanese version goes to the Wagner members, they might by now know what this Star Trek grind is about. But maybe his overseas customers, especially first-time ones, will have no idea what that means.
Yeah. But the previous one, he had it, I think no, he didn't have any English explanation. It was just the name. So these are the grinds available for the 18 karat C nibs. And then for the M nibs, he has adjusted, wet and creamy, soft kugel, cursive italic soft, and axe shape. Do any of you know what axe shape is?
I would assume architect.
Yeah. Oh, and for the 18 karat C nib, he also had spoon shape.
I wonder what the difference is between spoon and like soft kugel. To me, that sounds like similar ideas.
Yeah. So one of the friends of the show, they emailed Mr. Mori and they said, "What is a spoon shape nib?" And he sent her back an image, and it was basically just a round nib. But
to do calligraphy, like the
no, it's just a round nib, and he sent a picture of a Pelican BB. He says this is what it looks like. So I don't know why it's called a spoon shape, but Mori-san's coming up with these wild, crazy names for the different stuff that he does, and it's funny, but you gotta appreciate it. You gotta appreciate the oyaji-ness in these releases.
But I think it's just great that he's opened up, a lot more. It seems like to like sell overseas. I think a lot of Japanese companies are crazy not to, and I think since he did have success with it, maybe other people will try too. But that's encouraging.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed is that this axe shape, he says he's only shipping it to Taiwan, Japan, and Hong Kong.
Oh, why?
She's not shipping it to. I don't know. He says this is specifically for writing in kanji, so he's not shipping it to anywhere else, which to me is wild.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I think many episodes ago, I think we talked about how there are some like Montblanc nibs from like the 70s, like some EF nibs that are supposed to be like accidentally very good for like Asian calligraphy.
Yep.
I wonder if that's the inspiration for this.
Maybe. We'll never know because I don't think you nor I bought one of these, right?
No, I didn't. Well, I did order 2 of the presidents, but both with a Nagahara grind, so that's safer.
Yeah, you didn't get the wet and creamy?
I did not get the wet and creamy.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are the Wagner pens, but this Wagner pen was really weird because the way you bought it was that he specifically mentions in his email, he says, I don't want to deal with you annoying customers anymore. So you're going to tell me what pens you want. And then he sent a blank BCC email saying, okay, now send me the money. But don't email me saying that you've sent the money. And so you send this money, it's not a unsubstantial amount of money. You send this money out and you have no idea if it got through to the right person or the right place, and you have no idea if he received it. And then all of a sudden the pens show up on your doorstep. Was that the same experience for you, Jacob?
So when I ordered the White Tiger, I did a Furikomi bank transfer. I can't remember if I emailed him back, but I've done that in the past, and in the past, like 1 or 2 days later, he replied back and said, I got your money and I will be shipping it soon. But this time he didn't. So 1 week later, I asked him, did you see my payment? And then he said, yeah, I got it. Now actually, an hour ago, I paid for the President pants. I'm not even sure if I should send him an email or if he will get angry.
Yeah, he specifically says, don't email me because it's a pain in the butt. Yeah, so weird way to do business, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it makes me feel a bit... I would much prefer to pay via PayPal. I understand why he would prefer Furikomi bank transfer over PayPal because, transaction fees and so on. But from the buyer's perspective... bit unnerving. It's getting a bit better nowadays, but in general, the way you do bank transfers in Japan, it's very old-fashioned, and you kind of wonder if you send it to the right destination or if you just went out in the nothingness.
Yeah, and it took so many click and form and
Now it's a lot easier with the apps, but Japan has like a different banking method to like the rest of the world, so even like international transfers are really, really difficult to do. So that's Wagner. Anybody else have anything to say, or we can move on to the next topic?
Since we're talking about Wagner and Morrison, I was just reading his blog and he was writing about Tokyo Pen Show and his plans, and I thought it was funny that he was slightly critical of tips. He said that it's really not an Tokyo International Pen Show, it's domestic glass pen and ink show.
So he was snarky about it, huh?
but that's funny because he goes to all of the Tono Limbs shows.
That's true. But at least to Tono Limbs, you know what to expect.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But, you know, give it some time, and, you know, we're going to have some new vendors this year, which I think we'll talk about later. So the next thing I want to talk about, we've discussed this 2 episodes already, but this Montblanc Naruto, I just can't get over it. I actually went to the store to purchase one last Wednesday, and I got to see the real thing in my hand. And I have to say that they did a really good job. Mostly, I would give it like a 7 out of 10. The barrel is deeply engraved with these motifs of clouds, and what's really interesting is that when you turn the pen, the way that the light reflects on the pen actually makes the clouds look like they're reflecting the light, so they kind of shimmer. And interestingly, what they've done with the clip is that it's not anodized, it's actually lacquered on the orange. But I do have a criticism in that the engraving for the cap, the Naruto engraving, I feel like that could probably have been done a little bit better. And especially on the ring, the orange ring on the section close to the nib. This is the part that I have the most gripes with. The pen being like almost $1,000, right? It's not perfect. So I would say 3 of the 4 pens that I saw, it had like these protrusions. It looks like it was like, it almost looks like it was hand painted on, and it wasn't perfectly straight through the pen. And I thought that, you know, for $1,000 pen, you got to get those details right? Because it's the higher in price you go, the more attention you have to pay in terms of these details. And it was clear that Montblanc are trying to do something new, because the leather goods, I look at the leather goods as well, and then the printing on the leather goods was not crisp at all. So I think that was a little bit disappointing, that the printing on the leather was a bit low quality, to be honest. But I think overall, the pen itself, I think it's a winner. I think it's a winner, and I saw a lot of people, different people have different takes on it. Some people thought it was, lowered Montblanc's brand value, but I really see this as Montblanc reaching out to new audiences and doing something different. And people who, Naruto, I think it's the 20th anniversary this year. So people who grew up watching Naruto, they're like, 30, 35 now. And, they are now of the age where they can be both fans of Naruto and also afford to go out and buy Montblanc. So I actually think that's quite smart.
So last time I compared this to Platinum's Star Wars pens, which is kind of similar, sort of wacky / interesting idea with somewhat questionable execution. But then I thought about it. Another example is Pilot's Pokemon pens, and they did this Pikachu pen, right? Which, and not only their like low end coconut, but on their very classy high end silver pens, which are like boardroom pens, right? And I think I
have one.
Yeah, and they pull that off very well, I was thinking. And I think you have that one, so and now you have this one as well. So how would you compare the execution?
Yeah, I would say that with the Pilot one, there are no flaws, right? You can have an opinion on the base pen itself, right? You can say, I prefer the 146 over the Pilot Silver, and that's a valid thing to say. But I think the product itself, right, the way that they, as you say, executed it, there are no flaws in the Pilot one. Whereas, and the price point is a bit different too. It's about $250 different. And so I think, we, at least I call Pilot Uragiranai Pilot-san. So the pilot who never betrays us, right? It's just the quality of their craftsmanship and the people that they work with. And I think those are actually hand done rather than the Montblanc ones, which have less detail, I would say, more machine parts. And yeah, I would expect for a higher quality, but I still think overall It's a super, super cool pen. Especially the nib looks really awesome. And here's the difference between Pilot and Montblanc. Pilot only came out in M nibs, which they misadvertised as F nibs, whereas Montblanc had 7 different nib options that you can choose from: F, M, OM, OB, OBB, and I think you can choose B as well, regular B.
Oh,
So-
they went all in on this. That's interesting.
Yeah. The only nib that you can't choose is the BB nib. But the ones that they deliver to the stores only have F and M. So if you want the OBB, you have to do a nib exchange. So I'm waiting for a few months for that. But I think it's really cool. And then to your point about ruthenium, this is actually ruthenium plated. So we'll see. But I think the quality of the ruthenium plating, it almost looks and feels more high quality than that of the platinum one.
Interesting.
So I think there's an elephant in the room where you have Sailor, who's renewed their factory. Sailor Moon's 30th anniversary is this year, and they've done a Sailor Moon pen before. I think there's some kind of a lost opportunity, right?
I was
Clay?
waiting desperately and nothing happened. And for information, I lost the lottery of the Sailor Moon glass pen that they did for the 30th
Yeah.
anniversary. So good for my wallet and bad for my mind.
Bad for your soul.
Yeah, but I was so
Yeah.
hoping that Sailor will jump on the opportunity to make something bigger than what they made. The set, I think, was 1 bottle of ink and a pink kind of pink Sailor Pro Gear, if I'm not wrong, or Pro Gear Slim.
No, it's a steel
It's a
nib,
steel nib. Okay.
and it's a 1911.
Okay. And I think they made another set with the with the black ink. I think there were 2 sets of them, but maybe it's more than 5 years ago they released it. Maybe it was for the 25th anniversary. I guess.
Which makes me kind of wonder, because they are the foremost brand in targeting younger ladies, and I feel like this is definitely a lost opportunity.
Yeah, I don't understand why they didn't do anything.
Yeah. On a macro level, though, Jacob and Alessa, what do you think about these pen brands working with, animation or something that's less traditionally associated with fountain pens? What do you think of collaborations like that?
Well, I think it's a home run. I don't think they can go wrong with that. If you look at any other luxury brand like clothing brands, a lot of them, like the Doraemon, and like you were talking about last time. And I think it's just such an interesting juxtaposition of a luxury brand and anime. And I really like that.
Yeah.
I told you guys earlier, I don't know who Naruto is. I've never seen it, but I wanted the pen, and I thought for a while about maybe going over and getting just like the pencil case or whatever, just because it just looks really cool. I like it, and if like you said with Sailor, it'd be nice if they did Sailor Moon. That would be awesome, or Totoro, or any of those. I think they would be home runs.
Well, you should at least go ahead and get the
Yeah.
ink.
Yeah, I think Totoro. There was this clothing Loewe, a brand who made the whole collection some months ago, and now I think Porter has made some bags release, and it goes with the opening of the Ghibli Park this next month. So I think they are following what's going on, and they are reacting on it, and I don't understand why Sailor didn't do anything.
I agree.
Yeah. Jacob, what are your thoughts on these new age trends?
Well, I don't think it's new. I think there's a precedent for this, not with fountain pens specifically, but if you go to like a big Japanese like supermarket or department store, there's gonna be like a whole section for something called like character bungu, right? There's all kinds of like pen cases and pencils and all kinds of school supplies from your well-known stationery companies that have all kinds of like Ampaman or whatever, like anime characters on them, right? So I think that this is very common. The unusual thing here is that we're looking at like high-end stationery.
Yeah, luxury. We aim for a market who has money, at least
Right.
some money, and as CY said, yeah, they aim for like young, like teenager, like who follow it. Same with Pokemon, who used to follow the anime or the cards and stuff like that, and then now have the power to buy something that more precious, but remind them some childhood souvenir and stuff like that. So it's I can yeah, it make me laugh when I read the comments and people are like, oh, I will never buy a Montblanc anymore. How can you guys go so how to say so low in your marketing? And I'm like, come on, it's unfair to. You don't judge what people like. Like, you don't like it, just don't buy it. Come on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I think one of the brands that did a really good collaboration is, I don't actually know how to say this.
Yeah,
Tag Heuer.
the watches.
So yeah. So they did a Mario Kart
I
collab,
saw that. Yeah.
and oh my god, it is so good. It is incredibly good. Like, I want one of these now. So and this is what I was talking about when we were talking about details, right? I mean, the days they have, like in Mario Kart, every day your watch shows a new day, but depending on the day, they might show like a banana or like a star, or like a red shell, and this is what you get in the game. And just they have like this is actually also a partnership with Formula One, so it's racing. You have this Mario on it, and it's just an incredible piece. And I think definitely more and more luxury brands should get on this. I'm very excited about that.
Same here.
One last
Now-
thing about this. So I also think I never watched Naruto, but when I went through like an anime phase, I watched Rurouni Kenshin. So that's probably the anime I remember the most. So the hero in the show has this like reverse blade where like the blade is basically blunt, right? And the reverse side is sharp. So I would love to see a Rurouni Kenshin themed fountain pen that is some kind of reverse grind where you have a kind of fat grind with some sharp in reverse. That would be perfect.
Because you have some work to do.
That's right.
All right, Jacob, you give me the contacts of the studio, and make it happen. I think as you said, they're just home runs. This is a no-brainer now, given the age of the demographics of the people that grew up with this, right? So definitely looking forward to more. All right, next thing I want to talk about are the Platinum and Nakaya price increases. So Nakaya announced the price increase first, and a lot of people who were reading the price increase went, well, there's all the prices stayed the same. So what Nakaya actually referred to was the difference in the exchange rate. They cited the exchange rate, they cited the cost of materials. So if you look at the Japanese prices, they're going up about 30%.
From November 1st.
From November 1st. Yeah. And they did cite that because of the exchange rates, some of the US prices will remain the same, which I'm not sure is a good or bad strategy. I think BOJ just announced that they are going to take action to prevent further drastic slip of the yen, but obviously we don't know how far it's going to go. And yeah, they said Japan will take quote unquote bold action to stem currency volatility if needed, whatever that means. But the Platinum price increase, which I don't believe is public yet, that's going to come into effect in January. And again, across the board, we're seeing 20 to 30% increases in price. So, for example, the Karakusa is going from 88,000 yen to 110,000 yen. The celluloids are going from 38,500 to 44,000. Rhodium finished. I didn't know this, but apparently the rhodium trimmed centuries, 3776 centuries, are more expensive, but they're going from almost 20,000 to 25,000. And then the regular century, which is the gold trim, is 16,000 going to 22,000, which actually puts, I believe, Pilot as, again, the most affordable gold nib pen in the domestic market. And Jacob, you and I have discussed this, but for many, many years, Platinum's 3776 Century had been voted as the top pen, or the top pen in Japan, almost precisely because of this price point, right? So do you think this is going to impact the way that people are going to buy in terms of the brands? Or do you think that the Japanese market really think that, 3776 is the great pen that the sales numbers show it to be?
I think it is going to change, because I think a big part of it is the whole value proposition, right? I mean, back in the day, famously you had Platinum, Pilot, and Sailor. They all had a gold nib offering at 10,000 yen, right?
Yep.
So you had the 3776, you have Custom 74, and you had, I think it was Profit Standard, right? Profit Standard is a smaller pen, so I think it wasn't really in the same range, but it was really Custom 74 versus 3776. And if 3776 becomes more expensive, I really think the Custom 74 is looking like a really, really interesting first entry-level gold nib pen.
Yeah, and even on their low end, right? You had the Plaisir, who's competing against the Kakuno, right? And the Plaisir is going from 1,100 yen to 1,650 yen, whereas the Kakuno remains at 1,000 yen.
Yeah, it may well be that Pilot eventually increases the prices. I think usually big companies that they have very big currency swaps to stabilize and avoid drastic changes. So that's also why even companies like Apple, usually the price of an iPhone remains the same for its lifetime. It's only when the next model comes that they need to adjust the prices, right? So that usually well-run big companies tend to do that. So I'm sure that has something to do with that. By the way, just one thing related to that's kind of interesting, but Pilot has been absolutely crushing it this year. So overall the market in Japan is down 6%, I believe, which by the way compared to the US is not too good. It's not too bad, but the market is down 6%. Sailor is also down roughly in line with the market. Pilot is up 35%. They're outperforming pretty much everyone, and not just stationary companies, but the big blue chip companies and even growthy tech stocks. Pilot is just crushing it this year.
Pilot is, and what you just said just now, a well-run company has these contingencies, right? And now we're seeing the strength of Pilot as not a brand, but a company, right? The management of that company. We've always talked about that on this podcast, that Pilot's the most well-run company of all of them. But you're really seeing the strength of that, the diversification in their product lineup. Even though I think for fountain pen fans, sometimes we're unhappy with how few new and colorful releases they do. They definitely have a good way to manage their products and their company. So hats off to them for that. Yeah. I think the other thing that I wanna point out is that once these prices go up, I don't see them, the yen's in the toilet right now, but that is what it is. It's not going to be in the toilet forever. And I think once it stabilizes and goes back, so meaning when the US Fed decides to go back to a sane interest rate, Platinum's not reducing these prices from that, right? So I think we're going to see it's a goodbye to those good old days where you could buy a gold nib pen for $100, right? And it's going to be a goodbye forever to those days. So inflation is real even in Japan.
Yeah, that's been quite. I mean, like, inflation in Japan has been like an oxymoron. That doesn't. That's an impossible combination, right? But now it's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about this offline as well. The issue is that wages aren't inflating, so we're gonna see a little bit of a crunch, I think, for a lot of these Japanese companies who are quickly realizing that a weak yen is not what they want. And I think the Keirendan also are saying, yeah, we don't want this weak yen. We don't want this kind of a situation. So, we'll see. But I think I hope this will push, again, Alessa, then to your point, some of these Japanese companies to sell abroad, so that they're not making a negative in revenues. All right, we gotta move on pretty quickly. Wancher. So I've said a few weeks ago I ordered this Wancher glass pen that they have, the Kunisaki glass pens, and Jacob, you ordered the Capic glass pen, and I managed to take this from you. Do you want to do a recap of Capic for people who might have missed it?
Well, so just a recap of the whole thing. So, I mean, you wrote your famous spicy article about Wancher, right? And was posted everywhere, including on Reddit. And it was an interesting Reddit thread where some people asked about, what about Wancher's other pens? Are they also not made in Japan? And then someone asked about, the glass pens in particular.
Yep.
And then one eagle-eyed commenter on Reddit, I think sincerely spicy, if I remember the name correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
Found out that the pens are indeed made in Japan, but then there is this like a prison is selling remarkably similar pens for a fraction of the price, and the prison is located in the same prefecture, and the pens look the same. Is this just a coincidence, or is there something more going on here? So, I mean, because for that reason, you ordered the pen from Wancher. I ordered the pen from the prison shop. I asked Wancher, and I got 2 different responses, which was kind of interesting. The reply on the English Instagram account was, no, this is not the same. And on the Japanese account was, we can't answer that question. But anyway, now finally we have the Wancher one and we have the prison pen side by side. Well, I don't have it, but you have them side by side now. So how would you describe the differences?
All right, so let's start with the pen rest. No, let's start with the packaging. The packaging is different. So the prison pen comes in this sky blue paper box, whereas the Wancher comes in this wooden box. It's a little bit more upscale, and it includes several things. It includes a glass pen rest, which is the same design as the rest of the pen. It comes with the pen itself. And then on the Wancher one, it came with a pen sleeve. And if we start with the glass pen rest, the pen rests are designed exactly the same down to the number of flowers that they have in there, which is strangely suspicious. And if you turn it over, they use exactly the same size, height, material of this kind of like a foam, a little foamy kind of thing. It looks exactly the same. The size is almost exactly the same. The pens themselves, however, are slightly different in size. I think the Wancher one was slightly longer, if I recall correctly. But given that these are pulled glass, I'm not super surprised that they're not all exactly the same size. The design is literally exactly the same, down to the very flowers. Now, because the Capic program, the prison program, they're not professional glass makers, right? Like so So I don't expect that the same person made all of the pens. It's probably a program where there's some kind of a pattern, and then you make it from the pattern. So the waves are slightly different, but I think the design is close enough that I think our suspicion holds water. Now, the thing that weirds me out the most is this pen sleeve, or this pen case that you get from the Wancher one. And it is hilarious because the pen sleeve is clearly not designed for the glass pen, because the glass pen is actually too long for the pen case. So you can't actually close the pen sleeve. I have to get these in front of you, Jacob. They are... You just... it's almost one of those things where you almost have to see it to believe it. It's remarkably similar. It's remarkably similar. And the gripe that we have, or at least I have, I think you as well, is that the prison is selling it for 5,000 yen. Wancher is selling it for $200. And yeah, so I think it's okay. It's even admirable. Again, we've talked about this. It's admirable that they're trying to, if they were trying to promote the rehabilitation of these prisoners back in society by teaching them valuable skills, I think that is very admirable. The problem is when you take those cheaply made products and then you create a myth around some mythical Kunisaki glass makers, and then you mark up the price by 4 to 5 times.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing, right? I mean, these pens are cheap precisely because they are prison work. Everything on that Cappic website, the online store, is cheap. Everything is cheap because it is prison work. So here you are hiding the fact that it's prison work, and you're marking up by close to 500%, which, just to put this into perspective, when you we have talked about some resellers, the JP Select and Pensachi. Sometimes they have markups in the range of 50 to sometimes in excess of 100%, but it's not that sort of where it ends. While here you have a markup of close to 500%, and you are, and there's no mention of, or there's a whole different backstory. I mean, this is so shady.
So
yeah,
shady.
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
How do they write?
I haven't actually written with my Wancher one, but Jacob, you tried it, right?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. The nibs are pretty big, and they hold a lot of ink because the grooves are pretty deep. So yeah, I mean, as glass pens, they're pretty good. Problem is that you're hiding the fact that they're prison work and selling it for a crazy markup.
Yeah. And the nib is the dead giveaway, right? I mean, we talked about it on the show before, but it's this whole thing in the glass pen industry where each glass pen maker has a different way of making their nibs, and that's what makes them unique. But the nibs are exactly the same.
Well, are you guys sure that it's a training program as opposed to maybe there's a guy that's a glass pen maker and he's in jail, and that he's making it as part of what he does for work every day? I mean, is it? Do you know for a fact that it is several different people? I'm just curious. That's all.
Yeah. I think even if it were just this one master glass pen maker who's in prison, marking it up.
Oh yeah. Well, that's unconscionable. That markup is crazy. Yeah. But I was just curious because glass pen making is such a very small niche thing, and I'm just wondering if he didn't pay his taxes one year or something, and this one dude's over there just making pens because that's what he does, as opposed to teaching someone how to make glass pens. I mean, because I find it kind of hard to believe that a prison program would have glass rods. You got to have a pretty hot flame. I mean, it's just kind of an odd thing to have.
Yep.
And so I was just wondering maybe if he got in trouble with taxes or something, and some dude that actually makes them.
Yeah.
But it just seems such an odd thing to have as a prison program.
So I spent a lot of time trying to find out if there are any like other glass studios in Kyushu or especially in Oita Prefecture. If there's any possibility that these Vanshu pens are sourced anywhere else, and I spent a lot of time on that, and I could really not find anything that comes anywhere close to these glass pens. So I'm fairly certain that these are made in a prison, because there's just no like, if there's another glass artist somewhere, then they have absolutely no social media or like online presence whatsoever, and no one has ever posted anything about them in ever.
Well,
I think you
guys' evidence is pretty overwhelming. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like that's what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, just the few things that you showed me, it looked exactly alike. But yeah, that's just kind of an interesting, odd thing. They must have they must have looked and just had seen that website and go, "Oh, this is a good deal," or
yeah, and they probably thought they could get away with it, right? Because not too many people know about prison industry.
Yeah, but they didn't know you were on the case there, Jacob.
Yeah, and I'm on the CAPIC website. It says it's a Correctional Association Prison Industry Corporation, and so basically they take a portion of these sales to fund the victims of crimes, and this, as far as I understand it, is also a way to introduce people to work after they get released. And so yeah, the data is pretty old. It's from like a few years, or the text is from a few years ago, but it's basically saying that there's been 41,000 people who are employed in these more traditional crafts work, and they're trying to facilitate the return to society, and that they're able to healthily reintegrate is the reading that I'm
I'd like to buy a pen from one of the guys once they came out of prison. That would be interesting.
And I would love to know the story.
Yeah, really.
Who is this person or these people?
Yeah. Well, you can always telephone them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. All right. Okay, so one of the more exciting pen releases, the Moonman C4, Jacob.
Yes. So I finally got mine. I ordered 2 of them, and it is.
I want one, by the way. When you decide to sell.
Well, it is really exactly what I was hoping for. So it's like a tribute to Japanese vintage pens. So like the shape is really this kind of balanced shape that you would come to associate with like Bane, Sakai, Eski, and then the clip is a bit like Hakate, like this kind of small, cute, adorable. Like it functions more as a roll stopper than a clip, but it's really cute. And of course, it is an inkirome or Japanese style eyedropper, and it works quite well. And the steel rod, it feels more, to me, feels more high end than an Opus, because these Opus, as we talked about, have this like squeaky sound. This steel rod works very well. And it takes the standard Moonman number 6-ish nib unit, so you can very easily swap, and there's enough clearance in the cap for like a Jowo size 6 if that's what you want to use. So it's everything I was hoping for, and I just love it.
And you know what, I have half in mind to maybe do a nib swap with you with one of those vintage kind of 5.5 sized nibs, to see if you can't put it into the pen to really make it further look like that Sakai SK tribute. But I think this is really like a love story to this is a love letter to vintage Japanese pens.
Yeah,
right?
which also really well. With the previous one, the Q1, the Tombow like Q1. I mean, that one is very similar to the Tombow, except that it's a demonstrator. But the Tombow one hasn't been made for quite a while, so that's fair, I think. But yeah, this is a continuation of that, and I think this is one that's going to be it's been very popular. And this is really Moonman at its best. It's clearly inspired by previous pens, but it's not a straight copy of anything.
Yeah.
And it's very well made and it's affordable. And this is going to be a hit.
Yeah, that's that. You're right. That's when they hit that sweet spot. They do a really good job. It's and it's just too bad they do other stupid things.
Yeah, you almost wish that they will split it up. Like you have one division that does, the copycats, and one division that does the more interesting stuff. And like
the stupid section and the fun section.
Yeah. Please use different brand names.
Yeah. I got a quick question. I watched his reel on the C4, and you stuck a sailor nib in there.
Yeah.
Did you just use the Moonman feed, or did you stick everything in there?
The Moonman feed.
Ah, that's interesting. And it just went in. And
it's one of the best feeds.
Oh, really?
It's one of the best feeds.
And it worked just fine. Yeah. You just slid it in there, it replaced the nib, and that was it. There was no adjustment.
That's it. Yeah, it was really easy to do. Yeah.
Because that really made the pen. I thought.
Yeah. I mean, the Moonman nibs, they're okay, but they're kind of boring.
Right.
They don't have much character. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you can easily swap nibs make it a whole lot more interesting.
Yeah, and you don't buy their pens for their nibs. Right. You buy the pens for the other stuff. And you know what's great about these? I think, and I've actually had trouble with my opuses in, like when I left ink in there for too long, I kind of stained the barrel. I couldn't get things out, and I'm afraid of breaking that rod. Whereas this Moonman C4, I don't know if you've tried to disassemble the back, but just given that the rod is steel, it seems much more serviceable and at least less fragile, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, time will tell how well it holds up, but I agree. And also, I mean, the fact that they're so cheap, I mean, you can just buy another one if it breaks after a few years.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so to our long-awaited expectations, Tokyo International Pen Show is in 2 weeks exactly, and I think we're all going, right?
Well, I'm working it, so same thing.
Yeah, I'm working it too.
And just exactly how are you working it there?
Yeah, so I've got a table with Gravitas. I've got a table with Gravitas pens, really exciting, and I think it's good because we're really bringing that international back. And we've got a few international vendors. So we've got Gravitas, and then we have the pen family for some reason. And just a little point on the pen family: a lot of people were unhappy when they bought Nibs.com because that means they would own the relationship with Nakaya. And at that time, we were thinking, maybe Nakaya is on a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation. But it seems that the pen family folks are actually going to have a meeting with Nakaya when they're here. So we'll see. There might be changes, there might not be changes, but we'll see how that relationship goes even after John Madashaw is no longer the head person in charge of that. But otherwise, I think we're really bringing that international aspect back to the Tokyo International Pen Show. Hopefully, foreign visitors will be able to actually purchase tickets because their system doesn't allow non-Japanese credit cards to pay for the tickets, which is wild. I also heard that from Monday you'll be able to reserve a very, very special pen released by Bungabox. So keep a lookout for that, and I think if you missed on the 823, you'll definitely want to.
Oh, do you have an insight?
Yeah, they just shared some days ago the color of the body on their Instagram. A lot of shimmer.
Yeah, it's a bandless Rialo. It doesn't have the cap band, and it's going to be a Cinderella themed Rialo. So this will be twice in 2 years that for their Tips exclusive, they're releasing a Rialo. Every year, usually they swapped up, they changed up the model. So I remember when they were still in Asakusa, it was the the Magic Valis, which was a Pro Gear Slim, and then the year after they had the Pro Gear Mini, and then last year they had the Pro Gear Realo. I think this year is going to be another Pro Gear Realo, albeit without the ring. So for me, that's personally my number one.
Will you be doing grinds?
Yeah, I will be, but I'm not expecting to have too much business. For me personally, it's really about, helping Ben out here, and I will have a product, hopefully, fingers crossed.
We are
Released
looking forward.
So we'll see. We'll see.
So are you the only one doing grinds then? I mean, is
Nagahara will be there.
But is he going to actually be
No,
there?
he's
and not,
actually
like
gonna be.
remote or whatever.
Yeah, at least.
That's the most. That's the most. I think it's always only just been him, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
That'll. I think that'll be a good introduction to the Japanese. I really do.
Yeah, and the high schoolers will come,
Oh, they are. They're coming.
but they're not showing. They're just attending.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Jacob, you mentioned papers. You wanted the A4 Slight White.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go to Yamamoto's table. It's always fun to talk to him as well. Other than that, last year I think the Komehyo table was the most dangerous one for me, and I suspect that's going to be the same this year.
Yeah.
And then there is Penport, which I think is just Mr. Pilot. I'm not sure what the name is coming from, but I believe that is just Mr. Pilot's Vintage Pilot business, if you can call it that. And
he has a different name every year, right?
He does every year.
He's go undercover.
And then that mysterious Chinese-Japanese Fuga is coming back, and this time they apparently have their own nibs. So I'm curious about that. I want to see what kind of nibs they have made. So
yeah, because last time they showed, but they were refusing to sell.
It was so confusing, that table. I mean, they clearly had some interesting stuff, but whoever, the person there didn't really know anything, and they were on a call all the time, and it was hard to get any information. So hopefully they have a better showing this time. And then finally, I'm really interested to see what Furuta brings this year.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Okay, what about you? What are you looking most
I think
forward
I will
to?
stop by Yamamoto to try some new paper, as I was a little bit out of the game this last month. And I know that Eda-san from Aon Glass Pen will be there from Kurashiki. So he's really looking forward to it, because I think it's been a very long time he didn't come back to Tokyo and any glass pen fair, at least in this side of the country. And of course, Bungo Box Cinderella, just to have a look at it. We never know.
Just look at it.
Yeah.
Course. Yeah.
Always first a look, and then we'll see. And I'm just curious to go back and having a stroll. And the ink, of course, this kind of coral, multicolor shading, orange tones. Like it changed from all the green and the blue we had the last years.
Yeah. And also, what are you looking forward to? Obviously, our live podcast, right?
Exactly, the live podcast. I'm going to go over and check out your table because I got to support the family here. But I'm also really interested in meeting the Stationery King. I had just done a lot of research on him earlier because he's really very knowledgeable about stationery, and he's really good. And I'm curious to see, what he's like. I knew last year he was there filming, and I watched his video from last year. And then I'm also just curious about seeing Staya. That last year was their first year there, and they just had a small presence, but I'm curious what they're going to show up with this year. And then probably Shokido. I just like Shokido.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, I think. It's going to be a good one. We're going to have probably the return of international customers, so unless I expect you'll be a little bit busier than years past, helping some folks out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to the new format, because last time we had those kinds of visitors, those kinds, but international visitors, was at the old venue in Asakusa.
Yeah, that was the last
Yep.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of the old venue in Asakusa, this is not about tips, but the Tono Limbs are going to have their Christmas party at the old venue in Asakusa. So guess I'm going to the Tono Limbs Christmas party. All right, and that brings us to the end of our very,
Yeah.
very long episode today. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining on the podcast. This has been episode 68. For the listeners who've made it this far, thank you all so much. Please share the podcast with a friend. Share with people. Post on Reddit. Post on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't know, wherever you want to post it. But just help us spread the word. That always really helps, and it's always really motivating. So, with that being said, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and just Google Food Fan and you'll find me.
And thanks for having us. My name is Khuê. You can find me on Instagram at MidaiCat.
Thanks, guys. I'm Alesa Inky Rocks on Instagram and YouTube and some other stuff.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a
See
lot.
you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.